Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you Starrily's Noble Neons collection. Several months ago during the winter season, Starrily had sent me over a bunch of their collections and some of their best sellers to try out, and that included the Noble Neons collection, but I felt like it was so out of season to review them, so I wanted to wait a while, and then I kind of forgot about them, but we're here now. I mean, it's 80 degrees today, neon season is here, so I figured I can show you this collection. I definitely do have some thoughts on these neons, but I will save those for after the comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first polish we have is Helium, and this is described as a vivid bright pink neon. No surprise, this was going to be my favorite from this collection because I love a juicy hot pink neon, especially in the summer, and this one was so stunning. As you saw, the formula was beautiful, super highly pigmented, very even coverage, just really on the crelly side, which I kind of wasn't expecting. I thought these were going to be a little bit more full coverage, though it does say on the website that it's opaque in 2 to 3 coats, but personally I didn't even find this one to be fully opaque on 3 coats. Here on 2 you can definitely still see some nail line, so there is a very squishy crelly like feel to it. The 3rd coat definitely did help cover that up a little bit more, but I don't know, I just wouldn't call this one of those shades that becomes fully opaque, but I don't think it's sheer enough to be considered a jelly polish either. I might just have to try it that way though. Either way, the color is stunning. The next shade in rainbow order is Neon, and this one is described as a vivid bright orange neon. This is like your true traffic cone kind of neon shade. It is just so obnoxious. Not exactly my favorite. I just don't think this shade is like particularly flattering on me, at least not for a full mani, but there's definitely a place for it, especially in the rainbow. And I felt that the formula was pretty much the same as the last shade, which you're gonna see for the rest of the collection as well, where these just ended up being a little bit more on the crelly side. They did have smooth formulas that gave me really even application, very intense color, but just a little bit squishy, which again, I wasn't fully expecting. Obviously, as you guys know, I definitely do love jelly polishes, so I'm not opposed to seeing visible nail line or having a squishy kind of finish, but I guess when it comes to neons, I just really prefer them to have a more creamy finish. But maybe it's the fact that it's Starrily too. Like, their other polishes that I've tried have all been really opaque, so I was expecting the same from this collection. Next we have Radon, and this is the vivid yellow neon from the collection. I wouldn't say it's your typical highlighter or tennis ball color kind of yellow. It's sort of between that and a primary yellow, as you'll see later in the comparisons. But yeah, I unfortunately was the most disappointed in this shade just because of how streaky the formula was. I feel like it looks a lot better on camera, probably because the neon color is just so blown out that you can't really see the darker spots from the streaks. But I can definitely tell in real life that I just wouldn't recommend wearing this on 2 coats. Maybe it was user application error. Maybe if these had wide paddle brushes, you would have better application and wouldn't need to go over it as much as I did. But yeah, I feel like this one just definitely needed a 3rd coat to really make it as even as possible, but I feel like I could still see some dark spots, so I didn't end up loving the formula on this one. The neon green in the collection is called Krypton, and this one was so intense. It really is like that radioactive, otherworldly neon green. I wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did because I just usually don't love these specific shades of green, but I feel like this one is just so good with how like radioactive it feels. If anything, similar to the other shades in the collection, I was just most let down by the formula, where it was again more on that crelly side. So it wasn't super even coverage, but I didn't find it as uneven as Radon, which was the last shade. I could still see some nail line after 2 coats here, but at this point I just really didn't feel like doing a 3rd. I don't think it looks too bad though. Like, if your nails are shorter than mine, you could probably just get away with 2 coats. Next we have Xenon, and this is the neon blue of the collection, and I was kind of worried about this one just because of how dark it looked, but I honestly should have just been more worried about the formula because as you can see here, it is just very streaky and not self-leveling either. You can just see so many light spots on my nail. It's just very uneven, so even doing a second coat didn't even that out at all really. It just intensified the color, so you get a gorgeous pop of blue, but I just don't love how it looked on the nails. And to be fair, it does say on the website that this shade in particular is opaque in 3 to 4 coats, which I feel like is so unnecessary. Like, I'm assuming they were aiming for this to be a jelly polish, and so if that's the case, I still think this just did not have a great formula because of how streaky it was. It definitely did look a lot better in 3 coats as seen here. You do still see some nail line though, and it definitely deepens up the color a lot. And rounding out the collection, we have Argon, which is the vivid bright purple neon. Unfortunately, this is the only one from the collection that is currently sold out, but they do have an email me when it's back in stock available on the website if you want to sign up for that. And at first, I thought I was going to be disappointed in this one, similar to the last shade, because as you can see, it's not the most self-leveling or even application, but I found that it was super pigmented, so it actually was the most opaque on 2 coats, which is kind of what I was expecting considering how dark this shade is. It's picking up a bit brighter here on camera, but it really is like a dark purple. Still a gorgeous color though. So for the Skittle, I'm wearing the collection in 2 coats alone on my left hand and then 1 coat over a white cream on my right hand. And you can see just how streaky some of those colors are. I think the blue and the purple are definitely the worst, but you can also see how much more vibrant some of these shades are over the white base, namely the pink, the orange, the 2 on my thumb, but maybe even the green too. I think the yellow is the only one that kind of stays the same. So now getting into comparisons, we're obviously starting with Helium and looking at it next to Cirque's Road Rage from the recent Vice collection. That one is a little bit more of a true red with pink leaning undertones versus being a hot pink. So if anything, it's more similar to something like ILNP's Vaporwave, which again is a red with kind of pink undertones, but it's not a true hot pink like ILNP's 2-piece, for example. I think that one's a little less neon than Helium, but even still, it's just a totally different shade of pink. So I thought it might be worth comparing to ILNP's Malibu from the recent watercolor collection. That one's obviously not a neon shade, but it's kind of a similar tone of hot pink, and it's also a jelly, which is sort of similar to the Crelly formula of Helium. So in some ways it is kind of close to it, but once you see them on the nail, there definitely is a very obvious difference, so they are not dupes. Next for Neon, I knew I had to show this next to Cirque Colors Pyro from a couple of years ago, which was originally a red, hot kind of orange, but my bottle has faded, so it kind of looks really similar to Starrely's Neon. And I did also want to show this next to ILNP's Turbocharged from last year's arcade collection. That one is also like a hot traffic cone kind of orange, but it's even more neon. Again, my bottle of Pyro is faded, and I feel like Starrely's Neon looks really similar to that. So I don't know if that's exactly what they were going for, but I would say Turbocharged is the most neon of these. Then for Radon, I of course had to show this next to Cirque's Electric Daisy. This bottle is from this year's Vice collection, which still has that neon touch, but as you can see, that one is a little bit more green leaning. So I wanted to also show it next to my bottle of Electric Daisy from 2 years ago that has faded a little bit, so it's a little bit more softer, but still too green. So for the other side of the spectrum, I have Cirque's Hedonist, which is a true neon primary yellow, so you can see just how in the middle Radon is. I guess if anything, I would say it's a little bit closer to Hedonist, where it's more on the yellow side, but it's a little bit more white based, but also has the worst formula compared to the Cirques. Then for Krypton, I knew I had to show this next to Cirque's Kushy, which my bottle is from the re-release 2 years ago. I'm not sure when it originally released, but I don't think this one has faded too much. And honestly, even if it did, it still is brighter than Krypton. Maybe Krypton would be more similar if it had a white base underneath, but you can still see just how full coverage Kushy is. Then for Xenon, I of course had to show this next to Cirque's Mile High Club from the recent Vice collection. That one was already a dark blue neon, but here you can see just how dark Xenon is by comparison. It almost looks like it's a navy blue. So again, it might be more similar if it had a white base underneath, but I wouldn't even do that just because of how streaky it is. And lastly, for Argon, I of course had to show this next to Cirque's Guilty Pleasure. This bottle is from this year, which is a lot lighter. If you watch that Cirque review, you know that my bottle from 2022 is a lot darker to the point where it's like a totally different color. And it is just absolutely wild to see how dark Argon looks next to Guilty Pleasure. Like, would you even call this a neon anymore? Because I don't think that I would. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Starrely's Noble Neons collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on these shades and if you have any of these neons, because I feel like I have heard really great things about this collection, but I feel like I was just kind of unimpressed maybe. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think that they're bad polishes by any means. They definitely are still super bright, again, maybe with the exception of those last two. But if you're familiar with me and my taste, you would kind of know that I just don't love the Crelly formula on these, which might be weird because I do really love jellies. I love Crelly polishes, but when I think of neons having like a thinner kind of Crelly like consistency where they almost pop better with a white base underneath, it just really reminds me of the early indie scene, or at least the indie scene when I got into it, like around 2012, where a lot of those indies just were, again, like thinner. They really needed a white base to pop. And I feel like we've seen so many brands like move past that, where they've been able to improve their formulas. So maybe I just have been spoiled by some of the neons that I've tried, like from Dimension Nails or obviously from Cirque, where they're just super pigmented, very creamy, and like eye-searingly neon, but without a white base. So trying these, I was a little let down by that. But I know that's just a total personal preference. I'm sure so many of you guys prefer that these are not super creamy and that they are a little bit more squishy. So you'll have to let me know what you think of them down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.